Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I was thinking about this last night, and I was talking to my wife about it. This idea of where would we be without greed, and I'm going to throw in selfishness because greed and selfishness go hand in hand. I was first thinking about the medical model, the allopathic medical model, and how it's a money-based system. It is a for-profit system which all of our, whatever we have out there, whatever we engage with in terms of food production, in terms of our travel, our cars, our everything that we engage with in terms of our system is a for-profit enterprise, right? So if you think about where we are in terms of our healthcare, in terms of our healthcare system, and how it is to generate money. Like it's a business. When you have to look at something as a business, you approach it differently than if you're just doing it for God or service to your, fellow human being, and the money just comes, right? What you need to live on just comes. You're just doing the work. You're not focused on the business end. You're focused on the best possible outcome, the best possible work, the best possible version of yourself as that, as like a doctor, say, right? It's a different way to approach things. And so if you're not thinking about money, and money is, you might not even be a money person. Let's say you're a doctor and you got into medicine to be the kind of person I'm saying, right? If you want to be a great healer, right? Doctor is different than a healer. A healer is somebody who has this energy of healing. And they don't necessarily have to be a doctor. You could be a healer, somebody who is just making people better, making the world a better place through their, energy of healing, right? And it's a specific role. A healer can be somebody beyond just, physical medical healer, but, I'm not going to get into that now. But it's an orientation and a gift. It's a gift somebody has. It's something they have to have internally, right? Something that they just, it's part of who they are. And if you approach this, your medicine from this perspective, you would run into issues, financial issues. Like you have to be a business person to be a good doctor. There has to be a financial, you have to, there has to be some focus on the finances. And now with insurance companies and, overhead and all these things, pharmaceuticals, all these things, big profit, big money stuff, you end up having to change your focus from being a healer to dealing with all those other things. I mean, it happens with every business. That's how our economy works. But if there was no greed, right, if our system was devoid of greed, human beings no longer were greedy, and there wasn't any selfishness to go with it, right? You got rid of the selfish aspect of human life right now. You think about where we are, let's say just in my lifetime, going back to, let's say, the 60s or 50s or something, and there had been no greed. And so all the innovations, all the, breakthroughs that would be there, think about what it would be like to go to a doctor now, go to, get health care now, if there would have been no greed for the past 70 years or so. And that all this medical breakthroughs were just about helping people be better, helping people be, healthy. Preventative medicine, because preventative medicine isn't very profitable. Things that prevent you from ever getting ill. Focusing on the immune system and boosting it and making everyone's immune system strong. See, the thing is, when you don't get sick, you don't appreciate it. Like if everyone else gets sick, maybe, yeah, all right. But, if no one was getting sick, no one would appreciate good health. That's the problem with human life too, right? And this kind of goes along with the idea of greed, because you become insensitive. Like you need to get sick to appreciate good health. That's, one of the issues. And so when you don't get sick, you don't realize what your immune system is doing for you. And so that's, again, there isn't much money in that because, people will take it for granted and they won't put much effort into it, right? But the, preventative medicine is not very profitable because sick people are good customers. They're motivated and they're desperate and they're scared. And so sick customers, and that's how the allopathic model works, addressing just the symptoms, but people are just sick enough so they're not dying. They can function so they can make money to pay for their health care. I mean, I've talked about this before, right? It's an effed up system in this way because of the greed aspect, because of the focusing on the profit and not the product of being the best possible medicine and understanding the body in the best possible way. And on a spiritual level as well, bringing in the idea of spiritual energies and, that you have a soul and these things, like looking at you as a whole being beyond your physical body. There's some scar aspect, which I talk about. These impressions that you have from previous existences or even earlier in your life that express themselves often in the condition of poor health. And so think about where we would be if that was the case, that it wasn't, a greed-based system. And it also would be to do with the food system. If the food that people produced was good, natural, healthy food, not addictive food. Again, foods that are addictive, like MSG, for example, makes you want to eat more. Things that want to make you eat more, creating cravings and things in you. And so addictive foods that are not very healthy, processed foods that make you overeat, those are good for the food industry, right? Cheaper foods that, aren't really healthy or shouldn't even be eaten, easier to produce, using demonic farming techniques with GMO foods and things that are profitable, right? That, like for something like Monsanto seeds where you need to buy their pesticides, you need to buy their fertilizer, and you enter into these contracts as a farmer, and you need, they like the model of subscription model. That's why Netflix destroyed Blockbuster. Netflix was something where people subscribed each month, right? Paid a subscription fee. It's a good way to, it's a pro greed system where you're always bringing an income from people, right? And so they like the people coming back and paying. That's why monthly premiums on your insurance and then all the other things that go with it, right? And so the food system would have to change. It would totally change if it wasn't about greed. It was about producing good quality, healthy, organic, natural food that was nurturing and would help your physical body, right? And so you'd see this all across the board in every one of these industries, that instead of being focused on the money about your profit, you would be focused on the quality of your product, especially if you were a spiritual person and you were serving God. You had this, you were serving God in a divine way, that whatever you were producing was, serving God in this way. The only problem with this, you can think about it with, say, like gasoline and, the power industries of electricity and gasoline and, nuclear power as well, I guess. That there has been clean energy. There's clean energy out there that is cheap. But energy is controlled by, greed, right? And so the oil companies and the car manufacturing, the automobile industry, and I mean now they're converting to electric cars, but it's still, similar issues. That it costs a lot of money to produce electricity and oil, right? And so the people making money who are in the oil business are going to make sure there's no clean energy. And I'm not talking about solar or anything like that. I'm talking about something that somebody would invent, like Tesla maybe already did, but there are people who have come up with these things, right? There's a Whispers of the Brighter World message from my, Heartfulness, like one of these predictive messages, prophecies, and it talks about how that at some point society will break down so much that they'll allow a clean energy that is, not very polluting and very cheap to be used. And such things are available, they just won't have it, right? So this is the greed aspect. Like, where would we be with all these things without greed? But the other part of the problem is, and I've talked about this before, there have been societies without greed. There have been Aboriginal societies, tribal societies that were healthy and in line with nature, attuned with nature, but they weren't moving either spiritually or materially. They just were living the same way for thousands of years. No technical innovations, no spiritual change, no spiritual, big leaps in spiritual development, just living the same way. Natural in harmony with nature, good, solid, very positive in that way, but not evolving, not changing. There's just, no evolution, either spiritually or materially, right? And then, with a debt-based economic system, you could take the money out and have an idea, an invention or whatever it is, build a market for something before you did the work. And that made everything go faster. I've talked about this in terms of our economic system. It made growth go really fast. And there were rewards for it, financial rewards, wealth, which was incentivizing people's ambition, which is another thing, right? Ambition is, without greed and selfishness, ambition isn't there either. And so there's not really much motivation to change things or do things or, personal glory. So these are negative qualities. Ambition, is a semi-negative quality. And wanting glory is, more, pride and glory and things like this is a more negative quality. And of course, greed and selfishness are much more negative. And those are all motivational. They're all intertwined. If you have greed, then you have motivation, you have ambition, and you want, glory as well, power, the greed for power and things. And so it's a real problem with the human race. Because if you take away these negative qualities, there's no movement, there's no change, there's no innovation, and there's no, people are just lazy. It's people will be lazy and just do the bare minimum, and which is all right. Well, they're not greedy and selfish, but they're not evolving. People are just going along with doing the same things for thousands of years with no change to their system, their the social system, their lifestyle, and their connection to God doesn't strengthen or deepen. And it's just it's nice, natural, whatever it is, pleasant, but it's not changing, right? It's not moving up the evolutionary ladder. And so you put some motivational type of, qualities in there. People want to make a name for themselves. People wanting to be special. People wanting to be great. People wanting to be rich. People wanting to be greedy, right? All these things. You infuse human beings with those qualities, and then you get what we have today, right? Very unnatural society where, everything's about profit and, everything's deceptive. And they find a way to maximize their, whatever financial gain, their gain for power, massive weapons of, all of it, right? Taking control and mistreating the planet, mistreating each other, mistreating yourself, right? Just, all the bad things we see. A complete nightmare of a civilization. Because one of the flaws with the modern day human being, of the last 5,000 years, there seems to be a human being that was, made as a slave for a superior alien race. Like that's, my understanding. My wife was doing she had found some things that I knew about, and she was listening to some video. We were talking about this the other day, and, there's lots of evidence that this happened, that there was like an alien race that came down. There have been different versions of human beings here. Like the Atlantis society, these various, like all the plastic breaks down after 10,000 years, right? And so if you think about plastic and how long lasting it is, that pretty much everything that we have now in our house would disappear in 10,000 years. Most of it would disappear much sooner than that. It would break down. There's a great video I saw. It was Nature Abhors Metals. Only gold, doesn't rust, right? Every other metal, as soon as you produce a metal, nature starts eating away at it, wants to get rid of it, wants it to break down. Cement, it starts to unbind, right? Cement has a binding, cement binds together, it forms a solid structure. And after about 100 years, it starts to unbind. That's why you see the infrastructure of our country, America, breaking down because cement, doesn't last. Even 100 years is, not that long in terms of society. And then you have all these structures starting to crack and break down and disintegrate. So it's a known thing that it takes about 100 years for nature to take over a human civilization or a city. Let's say all the human beings die or leave a city, and within 50 years, I'm sorry, 50 years, nature will, take the city back. I mean, you can see it all along. Like there's things growing through the cracks in the sidewalk and the road, right? Animals start living in buildings. I mean, you're already fighting off the animals in your house, right? Insects and rodents are already trying to creep into your house because there's food there. And before you know it, like, there's some, bigger animals and birds, one of your windows, the windows start to crack and the animals start going into these buildings and setting up camp and setting up their homes in these buildings. As the vines start to grow and the things start to grow into it, trees start growing, and all of a sudden, you go to these ancient cities, these ruins, you can find them in the jungle, and the jungle has grown into the city, right? The city's still there, kinda, but it's been absorbed by nature. And so we only know about civilizations that were there 5,000 years ago. And we know very little. 10,000 years, maybe there's once in a while you find something buried in the, like sand and preserved, something preserved in amber or whatever. They found things. Like there's, this forbidden archaeology. There's this guy, I think his name is Richard Cremo, something Cremo. And he's written books about this, all the stuff they found, and, immediately is boxed up and put in a warehouse like in the end of the first Indiana Jones movie. And so it's hidden away. But, there's been people on this planet, different types of people for millions of years. And the most modern version is a poorly genetically modified test tube slave that has a very short lifespan for, obvious reasons. If you see the first Blade Runner movie, they made these clones and they only lived 4 years. They were superior in their ability to do work, but they couldn't sustain any sort of revolt because they only were around for 4 years, right? And so they were, genetically sped up, which is, like human beings should live a lot longer than we do, especially, with now I talked about the healthcare issues. And so when you have a slave mentality and you're not, you didn't come up upon your evolution naturally, and there's, animalistic tendencies there, like a blending of alien DNA with a chimpanzee is what, seems to be the consensus of what happened because of the fused, there's these chromosomes that are fused together because they didn't match up, right? The alien DNA and the chimpanzee DNA didn't match up. So, there's this idea. But, let's just assume this happened, right? We can't, there's proof about it. I'm not going to get into that. But, that human beings are, we have these flaws because we are made sloppily in a genetic, some sort of, a quickie genetic situation to create a slave race to do work and, harvest whatever they need to harvest on this planet and then leave us here to figure things out afterwards, which kind of explains a lot, right? The slave mentality, the, self-hatred, all the stuff that people exhibit and a lack of, there's just not this wanting to do good work for God, right? Wanting to please God, wanting to, that can be an ambition in itself, not a like a selfish one, but a motivational factor. When somebody just wants to serve God in such a way that they wake up motivated and with a lot of energy to serve the greater good. And if that existed where there was some ambition and there was some, a willingness for change and innovation, a craving to change, a craving to evolve and develop, and also, spiritually, but also on a material level, and move the race forward both on a spiritual level and a material level, then we would have, a much better civilization. There would be movement, there would be innovation, there would be, progress, but also it would be without greed, right? Would be without selfishness. It would be just done for the greater good. People not looking for a thumbs up or, a pat on the back or whatever. You just, internally motivated where you were satisfied, on a soul level in the product that you were putting out there into the world. It's been a tragedy of the human experience that people don't get motivated by the higher. It takes lower level tendencies, lower level, like I said, animalistic type of selfish. And I want to say animalistic because, there's a selfishness with animals, territorial, right? Competitiveness. Like there's been, like I've been watching the hummingbird feeder, and there's the hummingbirds that, dominate other hummingbirds and chase anybody away from the hummingbird feeder, even though there's plenty, right? You see this with animals, which is unfortunate. The pecking order, the aggression, the most dominant animal taking all the best stuff, and, often preventing other animals from getting things, right? Access to better eating areas, grazing territory, and things like this. I've observed it in, our animals, our dogs, our cows, our chickens, and then, goats when we had them, and all the various domesticated animals, and then you see it in nature as well, right? This competition, the fighting off of, an aggression to get the best for oneself. And often when you have a full belly, like even little cute little hummingbirds, they'll sit there and just prevent other hummingbirds from taking their, what they consider their hummingbird feeder. And it's plenty because it's a bottomless cup that my wife keeps on filling up, right? Like it's not like it's going to ever empty. And they're just sitting there preventing others from taking it, right? So there's a lack of sharing. There's a pecking order and things, even in the animal kingdom. And then it's even more profound in the human being. And there's just a lack of motivation if there isn't something in it for you, right? We all have this, we all suffer from this. Where's the motivation come from? Sustained motivation to accomplish something. If there's no glory, if there's no profit, if there's no, material satisfaction for what you're doing. What am I getting out of this? Like this is, just always there, and it's promoted by our economic system, right? Without some lower motivation, then people just don't care, do the bare minimum. And so the higher motivations aren't there. And I don't know if that could ever be reversed. I don't know if there's just genetic flaws in our, species, our modern day human being that can't be overcome, right? Like if greed is gone, then what replaces it, right? Devotion. So like if you have greed, or if you take away greed, then what motivates people to do better? Then is it devotion? Devotion to God, duty. What are the qualities that then are there that human beings can develop to motivate them to work hard and participate and contribute without any thought of selfish profit and competitive. Competition is one of the things that drives innovation. People want to be first, and they want to they want to be whatever it is, right? And so all the things that go with that competition, the glory and the profit and all the things that you get from winning something like a competition for like Tesla versus Edison, like this kind of thing, right? Right now, Chevy is making an electric truck, and Ford already has one. And so there's a competition for the electric truck market, right? Just like for the gas driven truck market. And so you have two competing, rivals, and it drives technology and performance. Just like it does on the athletic field, where people have to get better, faster, stronger, have to get more creative in terms of their offensive and defensive schemes, right? And so when there's profit and glory and competition, these things are driving, motivating factors, but they come from a lower place, a selfish place, right? And I've been thinking about that because of the issues now with the Heartfulness organization that's happened. It's a great system, the transmission and cleaning. Some of you guys who watch my Journey series know what I'm talking about here. And it helps to infuse these positive tendencies and positive motivation and a duty towards God and a deep devotion to God to motivate people to be better, right? It can do that, but it's falling on some difficult times. Even all the way up to the highest level of the system, the master of the system, and the human, lower tendencies creeping through, right? And it's, been a real bummer for me because, I saw changes in me, where I became less selfish and less competitive, but was still motivated to produce, quality work, even more so. Because when you work for God, you'll do a lot more than when you work for money. I mean, people love money, and money's, a motivating factor, but the love of God and, devotion, people, I mean, that's why religions are so powerful. People's wanting to perform for God and, contribute to God's, serve God and, all these things and contribute to the natural world, the natural universe is something that is, superior when people really click into it. And so, I'd hope to see that this would catch on, right? That, there was going to be an opening of more people doing this, right? This heartfulness system where they receive transmission and they get the cleaning and they start, becoming better people, which I've seen, my own life and with other people. So it's been a real blow to, realize that, the negative human tendencies have really, are starting to take a toll on the system in some ways that, hopefully it'll be reversed, but it's right now it sucks, right? It's, the organization sucks. And so I've been wondering, like, what is it going to take? Like, some sort of, just a complete ass kicking of our system, our, economic system, where there's a complete beatdown and a complete punishment, some like, divine, like slap, like getting slapped by God, right? The whole, where we, people feel like some remorse and some sense of redemption and have to live with squalor and pain and, all the, the like birth defects from nuclear fallout, right? And, all of it, like, not having the abundance that we have now and just, struggling in some, the wrath of God almost type of way where, people are like, okay, yeah, like we understand we did wrong and we have to fix it. Some motivational factor, where there's just misery and, a level of insight into our, our previous behaviors as, other people and, civilizations that led to the catastrophe that's going to happen in the future. I mean, like it's almost like some last ditch effort for people to realize, yeah, we just did this to ourselves and the planet. We have to be better. Like, I don't know. There has to be some sort of, like hit rock bottom moment. I guess that's all we have left at this point. Anyways, I think I got some other things to talk about here. I'll either include them in this video. I'm not sure if I'll just put this out separately, and I got a few more things to cover here. I want to revisit the Dark Brandon meme because it's just hilarious. But anyways, this is Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.